for too long, and that the relatively low number of Americans who complete a college degree compared to other countries is a national tragedy. The March 30th issue of the Chronicle of Higher Education reported on President Obama's visit to Northern Virginia Community College, where he signed legislation that ends the bank-based lending system for student loans and pours billions of federal dollars into higher education. The savings from ending subsidies to private student lenders will go to the Pell Grant program, community colleges, including minority-serving institutions, and a grant program to improve college access and completion. The Vice President's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, who is on the faculty at Northern Virginia Community College, will lead a community college summit at the White House this fall. While much has been made about the fact that the amount earmarked for community college is only $2 billion and not the $12 billion that was originally promised us, let's face it, it's still $2 billion. We know the upside of the increased enrollment is increased revenue, but is there a downside to our good fortune? What are some of the areas that will be impacted by an increase in enrollment, besides parking? Class sizes will increase. Many of us took large lecture courses as undergrads, and at least for me, they were some of my least favorite courses. The instructor didn't know my name, it was next to impossible to ask a question, and we never got homework back. We may not fill a lecture hall with 150 or 200 students, but for the non-traditional student who has not been in school for years, or an at-risk student who dropped out of high school, sitting in a class of 40 or 50 students can be just as overwhelming. How large is too large? How skilled is an instructor at engaging the students in the class? There is no perfect answer or magic number for class enrollment. Splitting a class obviously means an additional salary. In the short term, the quick buck will be made by keeping all the students in one class. However, the survey of entering student engagement's 2009 national report, Benchmarking and Benchmarks, Effective Practice with Entering Students, identified a common element that encouraged students to remain enrolled, and that was a strong early connection with someone at the college. Splitting a class of 35 into two classes, one of 17 and one of 18, can, in the long run, help improve retention. While one can look at a classroom and see that it is overflowing, there usually is less of an understanding of the impact that increasing enrollment has on student services, such as academic advising, financial aid, tutoring, and job placement. Because students use these services on an individual basis or communicate by email, you are less likely to see how the workload for these individuals has increased. Given the increased caseload for the individuals in student services, there is an increased risk of students falling through the cracks. Beginning in 2007, the survey of entering student engagement reviewed the impact that the first 3 weeks of college had on the trajectory of approximately 13,000 students from 22 community colleges. The results indicated that only 23% of the entering students reported that a specific person was assigned to them so they could see the person when they needed assistance. 50% of entering students were told that they could apply for financial aid, but only 29% said that a financial aid staff member helped them analyze their needs for financial assistance. Piper Fogg's recent article in the Chronicle of Higher Education points out that as community college enrollment soar as a result of the recession, budgets for student services have not kept pace. Fogg's article, which focused on counseling and mental health services, noted that there are fewer counselors to go around at a time when students need them more than ever, as they cope with personal or mental health problems magnified by financial stress. Counselors report that they are seeing more students arrive with pre-existing anxiety and depression, as well as more veterans who can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and other problems. According to Education Department statistics, 12% of students at public two-year colleges reported having a disability of some type, and of those, 10% said they had a mental, emotional, or psychiatric condition. A White House panel set up after the shootings at Virginia Tech 3 years ago concluded that violence on campus has been on the rise, corresponding with the increase in student enrollment. In a study by Noel Levitt on student retention practices at two-year institutions, they asked 111 institutions to identify their most effective retention strategies. The top 5 responses were: number 1, advising; number 2, early alert of students in trouble; number 3 was faculty involvement; 4, personal contact with students; and 5, student support services. The areas that our peer institutions identified as being the most effective for retention are the areas being stretched the thinnest by the current influx of students. We may tell our students that we want them to succeed, but do we demonstrate that we want them to succeed, and do we provide them with the support to enable them to succeed? The high unemployment rate that is helping to drive individuals to enroll in our schools is a double-edged sword, because it means our placement offices will have a tougher time trying to place our graduates. When we look at unemployment rate by level of education, those who are 25 and older with less than a high school diploma, their unemployment rose from 6% in 2007 to 16% as of last fall. The construction field is a large employer of this segment, so as the housing market imploded, that impacted the employment for that segment. Individuals with some college or an associate's degree fared better in holding on to their jobs with an unemployment rate of just below 8% last fall. Looking at the length of time an individual is unemployed, research has shown that those with only a high school diploma and those who dropped out of high school have the toughest time finding a new job. Related to job placement is the employability of our students. Do our students have the skills and competencies we expect them to have upon graduation? If we are admitting more students, we have to be careful that we don't unintentionally pressure instructors into passing a student for the sake of our retention figures. Students who enter the job market with a diploma, but without the skills and employers expect them to have from your institution, could end your relationship with that employer. Now, for those of you who have not dozed off, you're probably thinking, okay, so we know this guy can Google, but he spent the bulk of his career at the Ivy League school in Manhattan that has real grass on his campus. So where does he get off telling us what we need to do for our students? So, to give you a grad school flashback, I'll talk a little bit of theory into practice. Last year I had no intention of leaving Columbia. For all of its faults, I loved working there, and I expected I would stay until I retired and then take classes for fun as a lifelong learner. When the phone call came last August about the job at Professional Business College, I thought, what the hell, I'll go meet with that. The more I learned about PBC, the more excited I became about the opportunity. What convinced me to accept the position was on the day of the final interview, when Leon Lee, the president of PBC, was taking me on a tour of the school. As we walked from floor to floor, President Lee would speak to students by name, ask them questions, or make a comment that let me know if he really knew his students and he truly cared about them. Mr. Lee has been extremely supportive of the steps we've taken in the past 6 months to improve retention, student and faculty satisfaction, and to develop new academic programs. My approach to my job is student-focused, and I'm a strong believer in communication and transparency. Many of our students are high school dropouts, come from other countries or have not enrolled in school for many years. As such, they are unaware of what is expected of them as students and what the consequences would be if they run afoul of these expectations. To that end, we developed a contract of civility and academic integrity that all new and continuing students have signed. We have copies of it over here that you can get later if you like. We even had the contract translated into Spanish and Chinese for our students in beginning ESL courses. Since